Before cinema got polished and predictable, the 1970s gave us something rougher, smaller stories with sharp edges and lasting weight. These 10 films may have slipped through the cracks, but they haven't lost their power. Quietly intense, emotionally honest, they still speak volumes, even 50 years later. It starts with a routine stop. Two plainclothes officers pulling over two suspicious men. Within minutes, one cop is dead, and the other is running through a dark onion field, unarmed, unprepared, and suddenly alone. The onion field isn't about the crime. It's about what follows. The slow-motion collapse of two men. One, a surviving officer shattered by survivors' guilt, the other, a manipulative killer who turns the justice system into a personal playground. James Woods, cold and calculating, plays Greg Powell with unnerving precision. He isn't loud or unhinged. He's chilling in his control. Every word he speaks feels like a trap. And John Savage, as the surviving officer, unravels in silence. His trauma doesn't explode. It festers. No one in his world knows how to help him. Not the police. Not the courts. Not even his family. This is where the film stings, showing how the justice system, despite its procedures and processes, can completely fail the human beings inside it. Trials drag on, appeals pile up, and somewhere in the mess, the lives of everyone involved begin to erode. Director Harold Becker shoots it like a quiet tragedy. No sensationalism, no melodrama, just cold, procedural truth. And that's what makes it hit so hard. It feels real because it was real. You don't walk away from the onion field feeling justice was served. You walk away feeling haunted. Because sometimes, survival isn't salvation. It's a sentence of its own. Watch this one when you're ready to feel the weight of consequences that never quite lift. Harlan County, USA, doesn't feel like a documentary. It feels like being dropped into the middle of a fight you can't walk away from. Set in the coal fields of Kentucky, it follows a community of miners and their families battling for basic rights. Fair pay, safer conditions, a future worth living in. But this isn't a history lesson. It's a raw, intimate look at what happens when corporate greed meets human resistance. What struck me most wasn't just the danger these people faced in the mines, but the courage they showed above ground. They stood on picket lines in freezing cold, face-down armed guards, and kept singing through it all. And the women, they were the backbone, organizing, shouting, refusing to be silenced. Their voices, tired but defiant, carry the film's heartbeat. Barbara Koppel's cinema verite style strips away all pretense. No narration, no gloss, just real people in impossible situations refusing to back down. Every frame feels urgent. Every moment matters. This isn't about one strike, it's about every system that puts profits above people. And decades later, it still hits hard. Harlan County, USA is incredible filmmaking, but more than that, it's a portrait of resilience in the face of brutality. Watch it to understand the cost of coal and the strength of those who refuse to be buried by it. There's something unsettling about watching the Cassandra Crossing today. A virus, a lockdown train, a government more interested in containment than saving lives. It's a disaster movie, yes, but one that hits closer to reality than you'd expect. It begins with a terrorist infected by a deadly pathogen boarding a train headed across Europe. Authorities know it, but instead of stopping the spread, they seal the train and quietly steer it toward a condemned bridge. The passengers? They're just collateral. Richard Harris plays a doctor trying to keep people alive and sane. Sophia Loren, caught between suspicion and survival, adds a touch of grace to a deeply claustrophobic atmosphere. Around them, an ensemble of strangers, lovers, soldiers, liars, all trapped with no way out. What makes this film so effective isn't spectacle, it's tension. The fear spreads faster than the illness. Trust breaks down. Rumors spiral. And in the background, a government quietly making decisions no one will answer for. It's Cold War paranoia wrapped in disaster movie clothing, and it's aged in a way few films from the era have. The Cassandra Crossing asks what a life is worth when the system decides it isn't much. Watch it for the suspense, for the atmosphere, but also watch it for the uncomfortable questions it never quite answers. The Silent Partner snuck up on me. I expected a clever little heist movie. What I got was something darker and far sharper than I imagined. Elliot Gould plays a quiet bank teller, mild-mannered, easily overlooked. When he catches on to an upcoming robbery, he doesn't report it. He prepares. He manipulates the moment. And suddenly, this soft-spoken man is outsmarting a violent thief and walking away with the money. But that's just the beginning. Christopher Plummer, terrifying in a way I didn't know he could be, plays the thief. Cold, intelligent, utterly ruthless. This isn't just about the money, it's about pride, control, revenge. And once he realizes he's been played, the tension shifts into something far more personal. What I love about this film is its restraint. No flashy set pieces, no over-the-top action. Just a slow, methodical build where every glance, every silence, every carefully chosen move tightens the screws. It's a psychological duel disguised as a caper. And once it turns violent, it doesn't flinch. The silent partner is a gem that understands the power of stillness and how easily it can shatter. Watch it for the mind games, for the unease, and for the moment you realize the quietest man in the room might be the most dangerous. Some crime films thrill you. Mikey and Nicky hurts you. It begins with a late-night call. Nicky's in trouble, hiding out, convinced a hit's been put on him. Mikey comes to help. No questions. Just years of friendship between them, and something darker underneath. This isn't a traditional gangster movie. Elaine May doesn't care about the mob hierarchy or shootouts. What she gives us is something messier, sadder. Two men wandering the night, talking like they've done it 1,000 times, but this time something's unraveling. Peter Falk plays Mikey like a man carrying a quiet burden. Loyal, tired, maybe holding back too much. John Cassavetes as Nicky is all nerves and desperation. Funny, impulsive, spiraling fast. Together, their chemistry is raw, unpredictable. It doesn't feel like acting. It feels like watching something real fall apart in front of you. There are long silences, sudden outbursts, small moments that sting more than gunfire ever could, and beneath it all, you feel this ache for what they were and what they can't be anymore. Elaine May shot this like a confession. Scenes stretch out awkwardly, emotions linger past comfort. And by the end, betrayal lands not as a twist, but as the only thing left. These forgotten 70s gems might not have topped the box office, but they've stood the test of time in quieter, deeper ways. If you're into thoughtful cinema that still resonates, subscribe to Vintage Verse and turn on notifications. There's a whole world of overlooked stories still waiting to be found. Some heartbreaks don't explode, they fade slowly like headlights in the fog. The Hireling is that kind of film. Set in post-war Britain, it follows two people from different worlds. A chauffeur, rough around the edges but earnest, and an aristocratic widow, still reeling from grief. They meet by chance, they connect by accident. And what unfolds is a quiet, aching portrait of a bond that never quite finds the space to breathe. I didn't expect to feel so much watching this. It's not loud or confrontational, but every look, every silence between Robert Shaw and Sarah Miles speaks volumes. He's trying to matter, she's trying to heal, and somewhere in the middle, something fragile and human starts to form. But class hangs over them like a shadow. Every moment of closeness feels temporary, borrowed. And the tragedy of the film isn't what they do to each other. It's what the world won't allow them to be. Director Alan Bridges lets it all unfold gently. No manipulation, no sweeping score, just people trying and failing to bridge a gap deeper than either of them can cross. The Hireling stays with you because it feels real. It's about loneliness, pride, and how sometimes the saddest endings come not from cruelty, but from silence. Watch it when you're ready for something quiet and devastating. The Chant of Jimmy Blacksmith. When I first watched it, I didn't fully know what I was stepping into. It begins quietly. Jimmy, a young man of mixed Aboriginal and white heritage, trying to find his place in colonial Australia. He's polite, eager, hopeful, but from the very beginning, the world pushes back, hard. What unfolds is one of the most harrowing descents I've ever seen on screen. Jimmy's attempts to assimilate, to be accepted, are met with cruelty, hypocrisy, and exploitation. Every door he tries to open is slammed in his face, and eventually, something inside him breaks. Director Fred Schapisi never sensationalizes the violence. When it comes, it's shocking, but it's also deeply human. You don't root for it. You understand it. That's what makes it so powerful and so devastating. This is not an easy watch, but it's essential. The film forces us to look at the cost of systemic injustice and the internal war of identity. Tommy Lewis as Jimmy gives a heartbreaking performance. So much of his pain sits behind his eyes, unspoken, scream beneath centuries of silence. Watch it not for escape, but for truth. It's a story that still echoes and demands to be heard. There's something uniquely uncomfortable about watching The Heartbreak Kid. Not because it's mean-spirited or cruel, but because it's honest, in a way that comedy rarely dares to be. It begins with a wedding. A young couple, full of optimism, heads off on their honeymoon. But by the time the hotel towels are folded and the eggs are ordered, that optimism is already starting to rot. And Charles Grodin, in one of the most quietly devastating comedic performances I've ever seen, plays it perfectly. His character isn't a monster. He's worse. He's ordinary. Elaine May directs this like a slow-motion emotional accident. You see every bad choice coming from miles away, and still, you can't look away. Every scene is laced with awkward silences, misplaced confidence, and moments that make you physically squirm. It's a film about projection, about falling in love with the idea of someone new the moment the old feels inconvenient. And May never gives you an easy way out. There's no grand lesson here, no moral redemption. Just ego, discomfort, and the realization that some people mistake desire for destiny. The Heartbreak Kid is a comedy, yes, but the kind that leaves a bruise. I went into this one expecting a slow-burn thriller. What I got was something stranger and far more beautiful. Dennis Hopper plays Ripley, an American art dealer with blood on his hands and something off in his smile. Bruno Ganz is the dying picture framer pulled into Ripley's orbit, and what unfolds isn't really about crime, it's about corruption. Of the soul, of the self. Wim Wenders doesn't film scenes, he builds moods. Long silences, flickering lights, reflections on glass. It feels like a dream slowly becoming a nightmare. And yet, there's a tenderness underneath. Two men caught in roles they didn't ask for, performing a friendship that starts to feel painfully real. Ganz gives one of the most subtle performances I've ever seen. Every look is a question, every action, hesitation wrapped in fear. And Hopper? He's both magnetic and unknowable. You trust him, but only because you want to. This isn't a thriller in the traditional sense. It's a haunting character study with blood on its edges and sadness in its bones. You expect hospitals to bring order to chaos, to heal, to help. But the hospital flips that expectation on its head, and then cuts it open. The first time I watched it, I wasn't prepared. It's not a medical drama in the usual sense. There are no miracle recoveries, no noble speeches. Instead, what you get is a system eating itself from the inside. A place where paperwork matters more than patients, and where the people trying to help are the ones breaking down the fastest. George C. Scott plays Dr. Herbert Bach, and his performance is something else entirely. He's angry, disillusioned, barely holding on. He walks the halls like a ghost, drained, disgusted, trapped in a place that no longer makes sense. And somehow, amid the institutional absurdity, it becomes deeply personal. You feel his exhaustion, his hopelessness, his need to scream into the void. Paddy Chayefsky's script slices like a scalpel. The dialogue is fast, biting, almost too sharp at times. But underneath the satire is real pain, a mourning for what healthcare could be, and a warning of what it's already become. Watching the hospital today feels eerily current. The same bureaucracies, the same burnout, the same systems stretched too thin. It's not an easy watch, but it's an honest one. And sometimes those are the films we need the most. Watch it for the performance, watch it for the writing, but mostly, watch it to see what happens when care collapses under the weight of control. Sometimes the most powerful films are the ones that never made a big noise. These forgotten 70s gems might not have topped the box office, but they've stood the test of time in quieter, deeper ways. If you're into thoughtful cinema that still resonates, subscribe to Vintage Verse and turn on notifications. There's a whole world of overlooked stories still waiting to be found.